Hello and welcome to the Responsive Family Sleep Podcast. I'm your host, Kim Hawley, holistic sleep coach, lactation consultant, peaceful parenting educator, and mom. If you've ever felt overwhelmed by all the conflicting sleep info, frustrated with sleep information that just plain felt wrong, or searched desperately for a truly gentle and responsive sleep approach, then you are in the right place. In each episode, we'll be answering your most pressing baby and toddler sleep questions, busting those sleep myths, and helping you understand truly developmental, biologically normal baby and toddler sleep, plus encouraging you to trust your intuition along the way. Let's get started. Hello and welcome back to the podcast. This week we are answering a question that I get a lot, particularly when teaching my newborn sleep class, but also a lot from clients, and that is, should I ever wake my sleeping baby? And when should I wake them? And does that make sense? And I hate waking babies. It feels so awful, right? All sorts of related questions and feelings come up when we say, should I wake a sleeping baby? And so many people assume the answer is no, right? And there are differing opinions on this and differing context to this. So at a most basic level, sometimes you should wake a sleeping baby, right? You should. Sorry, sometimes you should. And there's lots of considerations that go into whether or not you should wake a baby or a toddler, right? Sometimes they are practical, like you have to go somewhere, or this is not your first child, right? My oldest, I hated waking him from naps. He was so grumpy and he fought sleep so much that I did not want to wake him. Keep in mind, I was not a sleep coach, and I might think this through differently now with what I know. But he had long naps. I did not wake him up. And it was fine because he was my only kid and I was at home with him primarily, though at various ages working part-time. And so I didn't really need to wake him up, except for the fact that it might have actually helped his bedtime trend a bit earlier, though he's a night owl through and through, and he's always been that way. So maybe not. But I did not wake him up. Now, my daughter had to be woken up because I had to go pick her brother up from school. So she would nap, and at a certain point, regardless of anything, I had to wake her up. I had to go pick up my older kiddo from school, and there just were no ifs, ands, or buts about it. She was not going to stay asleep when I loaded her into the carrier on my back to go get her brother. So there's practical stuff there, right? Sometimes we just have to do what we have to do. And the idea that you wouldn't be in that position is privileged and is just not realistic for most folks. So from that angle, yeah, we have to wake a sleeping baby. But then there's the should we wake a sleeping baby in order to provide a little bit of structure or shaping to their sleeps? And people have different opinions on this, right? And I do think to a certain extent, how your child reacts matters. But I do recommend capping naps sometimes and having a set time that you wake your baby up in the morning after looking at their overall sleep needs, right? This isn't just pulling these ideas out of nowhere. But sometimes having a little guidance around sleep actually helps the big picture of sleep go more smoothly. So especially if you use blackout curtains and it's really dark and you're not getting any environmental cues in the morning, right? Sometimes we get some messy end of nights, right? We get some longer nights than your baby really needs. And so it can be helpful to let some light in to cue your baby, but also it can make sense to have a time by which you wake them up and you start your day. And naturally, this tends to happen with work and daycare. And if you have a nanny or you're at home with your kiddos or work from home, sometimes we don't have those hard start times. And so it's not happening as organically. So I do think that regular morning start time is helpful. Ideally, we are matching pretty closely to your baby's needs, but just using it to stabilize. And then capping naps. So this really depends on context, right? Do you have a baby who tends to nap really, really, really long and you want to shift some of that sleep to the nighttime? Do you know that if your baby sleeps really long in the morning, they're going to have trouble getting their later nap in, and they're just going to be grumpy the rest of the day? Or do you notice if your baby naps longer than a certain amount of time on one nap a day, that bedtime goes really late and they just, are more likely to have split nights, or they have a worse night? I think these patterns matter and can be a reason to step in and wake your baby up and cap some naps. With, keeping in mind that we need to look at the big picture. So I said before, I never woke my oldest up, and I was not a sleep coach at the time. He's really grumpy to wake up. Like literally this morning, on the day that I am recording this, I woke him up to go to school, and he was super crabby. And he went to bed at his normal time. He's just not always the easiest. When he wakes naturally, totally easier to wake up. But, for whatever reason, waking him from his naps as a toddler, as a 1-year-old, as a 2-year-old, as a 3-year-old, it was not fun, and so I didn't do it. But he also had really late bedtimes, and we accepted that. And so looking back now, I might tell my younger mom self that, like, hey, if you make sure he's up by, 4 or up by 3:30, you might actually get him down to sleep before, 9:30 at night. And so, it was fine. We were fine. It was not a huge issue. But you can see those relationships of how the naps play out and their effect on later naps, their effect on bedtime, their effect on the big picture of sleep. And that can sometimes give us a reason to cap a nap, right? And to wake a baby up in an effort to get a more sustainable overall sleep pattern. So there are no yes or no total answers on this. There's no perfect rule of thumb for when to wake a baby, when to wake a toddler. It's really about the big picture, how your little reacts. Are they super grumpy? Do they roll with it? We don't want to deprive them of sleep that they need, and yet we live in a modern culture, and sometimes we really do need to make the big picture sleep pattern work better for the family. And occasionally, guiding sleep a little bit, waking babies up, capping naps, things like that can be a piece in that sort of puzzle. So sometimes you may wake your baby up, and sometimes you may decide you're not going to wake your baby up because it's not worth it. They're too grumpy. It doesn't make a difference. It makes the rest of the day super crabby. And those are both really valid choices to make, and will affect what decision you make there. So I hope this at least helps you be less afraid of waking your baby up if you need to, or you notice it's helpful, or feel less guilty about it, and know that it will work for some kiddos, it won't work for other kiddos. And as with everything in sleep, we need to take an idea, try it out with your baby, and see how they react. Thank you for joining me today. I hope this episode left you feeling more informed, confident, and encouraged on your sleep journey. And just a reminder before you go that nothing in this episode is individualized to your specific sleep situation, nor is it to be taken as medical advice. Take what resonates, ignore what doesn't, and check with your healthcare provider about any medical concerns. Take a moment to subscribe to this podcast so that you'll never miss an episode. And take a moment to rate, review, or share an episode you love on social media. All of that helps parents just like you find me, this podcast, and this gentle and responsive sleep information. I'll see you next time.